The dying Light Commander Ziltha pressed her three-fingered hand against the cracked view screen of the research station, Harmony's Edge. Through the spider web of fractures, she watched the Krex warships circle like metal vultures. Their black hulls gleamed under the dying red sun of the Kethara system. "How long until they break through our shields?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Engineer Moxtal looked up from his console, his large eyes filled with fear. "Maybe 20 minutes. 30 if we're lucky." Lucky. What a strange word to use when facing certain death. The research station had been humanity's gift to the galaxy, in a place where 50 different species worked together to unlock the secrets of the universe. Scientists, doctors, teachers, and their families lived here in peace. Children from a dozen worlds played in the gardens. Couples from different species shared meals and dreams. All of that was about to end. The Krex had come without warning. No demands, no negotiation, just pure destruction. Their ships had emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of angry insects, immediately opening fire on anything that moved. The station's defense grid lasted exactly 4 minutes. "Commander," came a shaky voice from the communications station. "We're receiving responses to our distress call." Ziltha's heart leaped. Help was coming. Who answered? The Galactic Defense Force, the trade union fleet. The communications officer, a young Velthari named Pix, looked confused. That's the strange part, Commander. It's someone called the Terran Colonial Defense Network. They say they're sending a Battlefleet. Terrans? Ziltha frowned. She had heard whispers about these creatures from the third planet of the Sol system. Earth, they called it. The galactic community knew very little about them. They had only joined the wider galaxy recently, maybe 50 standard years ago. Most species considered them primitive. "Are you sure about this?" she asked Pix. "What kind of ships are they sending?" Pix's ears drooped with uncertainty. "They didn't say, Commander." The message was very short. Just help is coming. Hold on. And then silence. Another massive explosion rocked the station. The lights flickered. In the distance, Ziltha could hear children crying. Their parents tried to comfort them, but everyone knew the truth. The shields wouldn't hold much longer. "Commander," Moxtal shouted from his station, "the Krex are powering up their planet crackers." Planet crackers? Weapons designed to split worlds in half. Using them on a space station was like using a war hammer to crush a flower. But that was the Krex way. Overkill in everything. Ziltha closed her eyes and thought of her daughter, safe at the university on Velthara Prime. At least she would survive. At least someone would remember them. "Commander, you need to see this." Pix's voice cracked with excitement. Ziltha opened her eyes and looked at the main display. At first she saw nothing but stars. Then, like ghosts emerging from the void, shapes began to appear. Ships, but not like any ships she had ever seen. They were huge, massive beyond belief. Their hulls were dark gray, almost black, with strange markings painted in white. They didn't move like other spacecraft, smooth and graceful. Instead, they seemed to push through space with raw power, like predators stalking their prey. "How many?" she whispered. 12. "No, 15. Commander, I'm reading 37 ships total. And they're big. Really big. The lead ship was the largest. It looked like someone had taken a mountain and shaped it into a weapon. Strange tubes and armor plates covered its surface. And painted on its side, in letters 10 stories tall, was a single word: vengeance. "Are they scanning us?" Ziltha asked. "Yes, Commander. Very detailed scans. They're scanning the Krex ships too." Suddenly, a new voice filled the command center. It was deep, rough, and spoke in heavily accented Galactic standard. "Research Station Harmony's Edge. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Colonial Defense Network, commanding the battleship Vengeance. We received your distress call. Please state your situation." Ziltha grabbed the microphone with shaking hands. "Admiral Chen, this is Commander Ziltha. We are under attack by Krex forces. 37 ships. Our shields are failing. We have civilians aboard, including children. Please, we need immediate assistance." There was a pause. Then Admiral Chen's voice came back, colder than space itself. "Commander, this is going to get loud. Tell your people to brace for impact. And Commander?" "Yes, Admiral. Those children are going to be fine. I promise you that." The communication ended. For a moment, everything was quiet. Then Pix looked up from his station, his face pale with shock. "Commander, the human ships. They're not running. Through the cracked view screen, Ziltha watched in amazement as the human fleet moved forward. Not around the Krek ships, not away from them. Straight toward them, the largest Krek ship fired its planet cracker at the approaching humans. The beam was bright enough to blind sensors, hot enough to melt asteroids. It struck the lead human ship directly. The ship kept coming. Impossible, Moxtal breathed. Nothing can survive a direct hit from a planet cracker. But there it was, still moving forward. Its hull glowed red-hot in some places, but it was intact. And now, weapon ports along its side began to open. "Commander," Pix whispered, "what kind of species builds ships that can take a planet cracker hit and keep fighting?" Ziltha stared at the approaching human fleet and realized they were about to find out. The civilized galaxy had rules about warfare. Limits, treaties, agreements about what weapons were too dangerous to use. But as she watched the human ships close the distance to the Kreks, she had a terrible feeling that humanity had never signed those treaties, and maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what they needed right now. The Iron Hammer. The human ship Vengeance didn't just fire its weapons, it unleashed hell itself. Lines of light erupted from the massive battleship's hull. But these weren't the clean energy beams that most species used in space combat. These were different, crude, violent, and absolutely devastating. "What are those weapons?" Moxtal asked, his voice filled with awe and terror. Commander Ziltha watched the display as hundreds of projectiles streaked toward the Krek's fleet. I think they're launching pieces of metal, really fast. She was right, though she couldn't have known it. The humans called them kinetic kill vehicles, chunks of dense metal accelerated to incredible speeds. When they hit something, they didn't explode like energy weapons. They punched through it like a spear through paper. The first Krek ship to get hit simply stopped existing. One moment it was there, firing at the research station. The next it was a cloud of expanding debris. Impossible, Pix squeaked. That ship had military-grade shields, armor plating. How did the humans just destroy it? But the humans weren't finished. As the Krek's fleet scrambled to respond to this new threat, more human ships opened fire. And Ziltha realized something that made her blood run cold. The humans weren't just shooting at the Krek's ships, they were shooting through them. A Krek's destroyer tried to use its sister ship as cover, hiding behind the larger vessel. The human projectiles punched through the first ship, kept going, and destroyed the second ship too. "By the sacred void," Moxtal whispered. "They're treating starship armor like it's paper." Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the communications again. "Commander Ziltha, are your people clear of the outer sections? We're about to get creative." "What do you mean, creative?" Ziltha asked. "You'll see. Just keep everyone away from the windows for the next few minutes." The second wave of human ships moved into position. These were smaller than the Vengeance, but they moved faster. And as they approached the Krek's fleet, Ziltha realized they weren't slowing down. Are they going to ram the Krek's ships?" she asked. "No," Pix said, studying his senses. "They're launching something. Lots of somethings. What the humans launched looked like tiny metal cylinders. Hundreds of them poured out of the smaller ships, creating a swarm of projectiles heading toward the Krek's fleet. The Kreks tried to shoot them down, but there were too many. And when the first cylinder hit a Krek ship, the explosion was unlike anything Ziltha had ever seen. It didn't just destroy the ship, it turned it inside out. Armor plating scattered in all directions. The ship's hull peeled apart like a flower blooming in reverse. "What kind of weapons are those?" Moxtal demanded. Over the communication channel, they heard a human laugh. "Actually laugh. Those aren't weapons, buddy. Those are mining charges. We use them to blast apart asteroids. Mining charges." The humans were using industrial equipment as weapons of war, but the Kreks weren't giving up. Their remaining ships formed a battle line and began coordinated fire on the human fleet. Their energy beams struck the human ships again and again. The lead human vessel, Vengeance, was taking hit after hit. "Their ship is going to break apart," Pix cried. "No hull can take that much damage." But Vengeance kept fighting. Its hull was scarred and blackened. Entire sections were glowing red-hot. But it kept firing those devastating kinetic weapons, and every shot destroyed another Krek ship. "Commander," Admiral Chen's voice came over the radio again. She sounded slightly out of breath. "We're taking some heat over here. How are your people doing? We're amazed, Ziltha admitted. Admiral, how are your ships still functional? You've taken enough damage to destroy a fleet. There was a pause. Then Chen laughed, actually laughed while in the middle of a space battle. Commander, you have to understand something about humans. We don't come from a nice, safe world like most species. Earth is what we call a death world. Everything on our planet is trying to kill us. The weather, the animals, the plants, sometimes even the ground itself. Another massive explosion lit up space as a Krex ship died. So when we built our first spaceships, Chen continued, we built them like we build everything else, to survive. These aren't just warships, Commander. They're fortresses that can fly. A new voice joined the communication, younger with a different accent. Admiral, this is Captain Rodriguez on the Indomitable. The Krex are trying to break off and run. Not today, Chen replied, her voice turning cold. They attacked civilians, children, let them try to run. Ziltha watched in fascination as the human fleet split into two groups. One group continued to hammer the remaining Krex ships with those devastating kinetic weapons. The other group moved to cut off any escape routes. But something was happening that made Ziltha's skin crawl. The Krex weren't just trying to escape. They were positioning themselves for one last desperate attack on the research station. Admiral Chen, she called into the radio. The Krex are lining up for a final assault on us. I see them, Chen replied. Don't worry, Commander. They're not going to get the chance. What happened next would be talked about in military academies for centuries to come. The vengeance suddenly accelerated toward the largest remaining Krex ship, a massive dreadnought that was powering up its main weapon to fire on the research station. But instead of firing its kinetic weapons, the human ship did something that defied all logic. It rammed the Krex ship. Not a gentle collision, not a desperate last resort. A carefully planned, precisely executed ramming attack at full battle speed. The impact was visible from light years away. The Krex dreadnought, 3 times the size of any normal warship, simply crumpled around the human ship's armored bow. Metal screamed. Atmosphere vented into space. And when the wreckage cleared, vengeance was still there. Scarred, battered, but intact. And still fighting, by all the gods of all the worlds. Moxtal breathed. What are these humans made of? As if she had heard him, Admiral Chen's voice came over the radio one last time in this act. Commander Ziltha, this is Admiral Chen. The immediate threat has been neutralized. We're sweeping the area for survivors, but I think we got them all. Admiral, how? How did you survive ramming a ship 3 times your size? Chen's laugh was tired but satisfied. Commander, when you grow up on a death world, you learn that sometimes the best defense is to hit first, hit hard, and keep hitting until the other guy stops moving. Looking at the wreckage of what had been the most feared pirate fleet in this sector, Ziltha was beginning to understand that humanity's reputation for being primitive might be inaccurate. They weren't primitive. They were just really, really good at violence. The unexpected truth as the smoke cleared from the battle, Commander Ziltha expected the humans to ask for payment, or territorial rights, or access to their research. That's what most species would want after providing military assistance. Instead, Admiral Chen's first question was, do you need medical assistance? Within an hour, human ships had docked with the research station. But instead of soldiers or negotiators, they sent doctors and engineers. Real doctors, carrying medical supplies that Ziltha had never seen before, and engineers with tools that seemed to fix problems before anyone even asked. Dr. James Morrison was the first human Ziltha met face to face. He was tall, much taller than her species, with strange pale skin and tiny eyes, but his hands were gentle as he checked the injured station personnel. Your arm is broken in 3 places, he told Moxtal, who had been hurt when the station shook during the battle. But don't worry. We'll have you fixed up in no time. Fixed up how? Moxtal asked nervously. Do you need to operate? Cut me open? Dr. Morrison smiled and pulled out a device that looked like a small, flat panel. Nope, just hold still. He placed the device against Moxtal's arm and pressed a button. There was a soft humming sound and then nothing. No pain. No surgery. Just a gentle warmth, that's it? Moxtal asked. That's it. Your bones are knitting back together as we speak. Give it about 6 hours and you'll be good as new. Ziltha stared at the device. What kind of technology is that? Bone knitter, Dr. Morrison said casually. We invented it about 20 years ago. Got tired of soldiers being out of action for months because of broken bones. 20 years. The most advanced medical species in the galaxy had been working on bone regeneration technology for centuries, and they still couldn't do what this human just did in 30 seconds. Dr. Morrison, she said carefully. How advanced is human medical technology? He shrugged. Pretty advanced, I guess. We've had to be. Earth is dangerous, remember? We're always getting hurt, so we got really good at fixing ourselves. As the hours passed, Ziltha watched human teams work throughout the station. They repaired the damaged shields with equipment that seemed to work on principles she didn't understand. They fixed the life support systems with tools that looked like they belonged in a child's toy box, but performed miracles. And they did it all with a cheerful efficiency that was almost unsettling. Commander, Pix called from the communication station. I'm getting a priority message from Galactic Command. Put it through, Ziltha said. The holographic image of High Admiral Vextar appeared in the command center. His expression was grave. Commander Ziltha, we received reports of a major engagement in your system. What's your status? We're alive, High Admiral. The humans saved us. Humans? Vextar's expression changed to confusion. What humans? We sent the 4th Defense Fleet to assist you. They should arrive in 6 hours, sir. The humans got here first. They destroyed the entire Krex force. That's impossible. Our intelligence says the humans only have a small defense fleet. Primitive ships with basic weapons. They couldn't possibly handle a full Krex raiding force. Ziltha looked out the window at the massive human battleship Vengeance. Its hull was already being repaired by swarms of small robots that seemed to work like metal insects, fixing damage faster than she would have thought possible. High Admiral, I think our intelligence might be wrong. Over the next few hours, Ziltha learned just how wrong their intelligence had been. Admiral Chen visited the station personally to check on the repairs. She was a small human, shorter even than Ziltha, with grey hair and scars on her hands. She looked like someone's grandmother, not a military commander who had just won an impossible battle. Admiral, Ziltha said as they walked through the station's main corridor. May I ask you some questions about humanity? Sure, Chen replied. What do you want to know? Our records say that Earth only has a small defense force, but what we saw today, those weren't small ships. Chen stopped walking and turned to look at her. Commander, can I ask you something? What do your records say about Earth's population? Approximately 7 billion humans. Chen nodded slowly. That's about right. Now let me ask you another question. How many of those 7 billion do you think are in the military? Ziltha thought about it. Most species dedicated about 1% of their population to defense. 70 million. Chen laughed. That same unsettling laugh she'd made during battle. Try 4 billion. 4 billion, that's impossible. No species can sustain that large a military. Commander, you're thinking like someone from a safe world. Earth isn't safe. Never has been. We've been fighting wars since before we invented writing. Fighting each other, fighting our environment, fighting everything. They stopped in front of one of the observation windows. Outside, human ships moved through space with a precision that spoke of long practice. When we reached the stars, Chen continued, we didn't stop fighting. We just found new things to fight. But we also found something else. What? We found people worth protecting. Chen gestured toward the window, where human engineers were still working on the station repairs. Every human who joins the Colonial Defense Network swears an oath. We promise to protect anyone who calls for help. Any species, any world. Doesn't matter if we've never met them before. But why? Ziltha asked. What do you gain from it? Chen looked at her with those strange, small human eyes. Commander, when you live on a death world, you learn that the only thing standing between you and extinction is the person next to you. Doesn't matter what species they are. Doesn't matter where they come from. If they need help, you help them, even if it's dangerous. Especially if it's dangerous. Chen's expression grew serious. The Krex attacked a research station. They targeted civilians, children. Where I come from, that makes them the enemy of every decent person in the galaxy. As if summoned by their conversation, Captain Rodriguez appeared in the corridor. He was younger than Admiral Chen, with darker skin and an easy smile. But like Chen, he had scars, lots of them. "Admiral, we've finished the security sweep. No surviving Krek ships in the system." "Good. What about their base?" "Base?" Zilta asked. Chen nodded grimly. "The Kreks don't operate randomly. They have a base somewhere in this sector, probably hidden in an asteroid field or a dead system." "How do you know that?" "Because we've fought them before," Rodriguez said. "The Kreks hit a human colony world 2 years ago, killed 3,000 people before we drove them off. We've been hunting them ever since," Chen added. "Following their raids, tracking their movements. This attack on your station was a mistake. It gave us the data we needed to find their home base." Ziltha felt a chill run down her spine. "What are you going to do?" Chen's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes got colder. "Commander, the Kreks have been raiding peaceful worlds for decades, taking slaves, killing innocents. The Galactic Council keeps talking about diplomatic solutions and economic sanctions. And humans don't believe in diplomacy." "Oh, we believe in it," Rodriguez said. "We try talking first. But when someone attacks civilians, Chen finished, "we believe in making sure they can never do it again." Looking at these two humans, a grandmother and a young man who could have been her son, Ziltha suddenly understood something that terrified her. The galaxy thought humans were primitive because they came from a dangerous world. But the galaxy had gotten it exactly backwards. Humans weren't dangerous because they were primitive. They were primitive because they were dangerous, and now they were offering to use that danger to protect everyone else. The reckoning, 3 days after the battle, Admiral Chen called a meeting in the station's main conference room. Commander Ziltha expected to discuss repairs and thank the humans for their help. Instead, she found herself looking at tactical displays that made her stomach turn. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chen began, addressing the mix of human officers and station personnel, "we've located the Kreks base." The main screen showed a star system with 13 planets. The third planet from the sun was marked with a red indicator. "Kepler 442 system," Captain Rodriguez explained. "The planet used to be a mining colony, population of about 2 million, mostly Althari and Velthari families. The Kreks took it 6 months ago." "Took it how?" Ziltha asked. Chen's expression darkened. "They killed everyone they couldn't use as slaves. Men, women, children. Our intelligence estimates about 300,000 survivors in forced labor camps." The room fell silent. Even the humans looked grim. "The Galactic Council knows about this," Dr. Morrison said quietly. "They've been studying the situation for 4 months. While people die in slave camps," Rodriguez added with disgust. Ziltha looked around the room. "What are you planning to do?" "What we always do," Chen replied. "We're going to liberate that planet." "Just like that?" "The Kreks have had 6 months to fortify their position. They probably have orbital defense platforms, ground batteries, shield generators." "Yes," Chen said simply. "They do. We've been watching them." The display changed to show detailed reconnaissance images. Massive weapon platforms orbited the planet. The surface was covered with military installations. It looked impregnable. "Admiral," Ziltha said carefully, "this looks like a suicide mission. You'll need hundreds of ships, thousands of troops. Even then, the casualties would be enormous." Chen looked at her with those unsettling human eyes. "Commander, how many ships do you think we brought to save your station?" 37. "And how many Kreks ships did we face?" 37 as well. "Right, even odds." Chen smiled, that terrifying smile. "For this mission, we're bringing 200 ships. 200. Ziltha felt faint. "Where did you get 200 ships?" "We called for volunteers," Rodriguez explained. "Every human colony, every defense fleet, every independent captain who could get their ship running." They all answered, "But why? This isn't even a human world." Chen stood up and walked to the window. Outside, more human ships were arriving every hour. Big ones, small ones, ships that looked like they'd been built for war, and ships that looked like they'd been converted from cargo haulers. "Commander, let me tell you about human history. For thousands of years we fought each other. Wars over territory, resources, religion, ideology. Millions died. Cities burned. Entire civilizations collapsed." She turned back to face the room. "But we learned something from all that fighting. We learned that when bad people are hurting innocent people, good people have a duty to stop them. Even if it costs you lives? Especially then. Chen's voice was quiet but firm. Every human who volunteered for this mission knows they might not come home. But they also know that if we don't act, 300,000 people will die in those slave camps. Over the next 2 days, Ziltha watched the largest military force in galactic history assemble around her station. Ships arrived from every corner of human space. Some were military vessels like the Vengeance. Others were converted civilian ships with weapons bolted onto their hulls. A few looked like they'd been built in someone's backyard, but they all had one thing in common. They were here to fight. The diversity was staggering. She saw ships crewed by humans who looked completely different from each other. Different skin colors, different facial features, different body types. Earth, it seemed, produced humans in every possible variation. "How do you all work together?" she asked Dr. Morrison as they watched a particularly strange-looking ship dock with the station. "What do you mean?" "You're all so different. Different appearances, different cultures. On most worlds that leads to conflict," Morrison laughed. "Oh, we fight each other all the time. Humans love to argue, but when someone threatens innocent people, we put our differences aside. Just like that. Just like that. It's called humanity, Commander. It's what makes us human." On the morning of the third day, Admiral Chen called for a final briefing. The main conference room was packed with human officers, each representing dozens of ships and thousands of crew members. "People," Chen began. "In 6 hours, we jumped to the Kepler 442 system. The Kreks have had months to prepare for us. They'll be ready." She activated the tactical display. Intelligence reports 16 orbital defense platforms, each one capable of destroying a cruiser with a single shot. Surface-to-orbit missiles that can track multiple targets, and approximately 50 Kreks warships defending the planet. Murmurs ran through the crowd. "The odds were not good. I won't lie to you," Chen continued. "Some of us won't be coming home, but 300,000 innocent people are counting on us. They don't know we're coming. They don't know help exists. But we're going to show them that as long as humans draw breath, evil doesn't get to win." The room erupted in cheers. Not polite applause, but genuine enthusiasm for what was essentially a suicide mission. Ziltha shook her head in amazement. "You're all insane." Captain Rodriguez, standing next to her, grinned. "Commander, insanity is part of the human condition. We've been doing impossible things since we learned to walk upright. What if you lose?" His grin faded. "Then we die trying, but at least those people will know someone cared enough to try." As the human fleet prepared for departure, Ziltha made a decision that would change her life forever. "Admiral Chen," she called over the communicator, "request permission to accompany your fleet." "Commander, this isn't your fight." "Yes, it is." Ziltha looked out at the assembled human ships. "Those people in the slave camps, some of them are my species, my people. And I'm tired of waiting for the Galactic Council to form committees and study the situation." There was a pause. Then Chen's voice came back warm with approval. "Permission granted, Commander. Welcome to the Colonial Defense Network." As Harmony's Edge detached from the research station and joined the human fleet, Ziltha realized she was about to witness something that would be remembered for millennia. Either the greatest rescue in galactic history, or the most glorious failure. The Deathworlders' promise. The jump to the Kepler 442 system was unlike anything Ziltha had ever experienced. Most fleets jumped in formation, arriving together in organized lines. The human fleet arrived like a storm. Ships materialized out of hyperspace from every direction. Big battleships dropped in right on top of the Kreks defense platforms. Small fighters emerged from behind asteroids. Converted cargo ships appeared in the middle of the Kreks fleet like ghosts. "This is chaos," Ziltha breathed, watching the tactical display. "No." Admiral Chen's voice crackled over the communication system. "This is warfare, human style." The battle began before the Kreks even knew they were under attack. The first thing to die was silence. The human ships didn't announce themselves or demand surrender. They simply started shooting. Those devastating kinetic weapons punched through Kreks' hulls like paper. The mining charges turned into improvised torpedoes, turned proud warships into expanding clouds of debris. But the Kreks had been ready for a conventional assault. What they got was anything but conventional. Admiral, Captain Rodriguez reported. The Crazy Horse is requesting permission to implement the Rodriguez maneuver. Denied, Chen replied immediately. That maneuver is insane, Admiral. The Crazy Horse is implementing the Rodriguez maneuver anyway. Ziltha watched in horror as a medium-sized human ship accelerated directly toward the largest Krex orbital platform. The platform opened fire with everything it had, pouring energy beams into the approaching ship. The human ship absorbed the punishment and kept coming. Are they going to ram it? She asked. No, Dr. Morrison replied, studying his instruments. They're doing something much more stupid. At the last possible second, the Crazy Horse flipped end over end and fired its main engines directly at the Krex platform. The exhaust from the ship's nuclear engines washed over the station like a river of fire. When the flames cleared, the platform was gone, simply melted into slag. The Rodriguez maneuver, Morrison explained. Use your engine exhaust as a weapon. Completely insane, totally effective, and absolutely something only a human would think of. But the real surprise came when the human fleet reached the planet itself, instead of bombarding the surface from orbit. The standard military approach. The human ships did something unprecedented. They landed. All of them. They're landing their entire fleet on the surface, Ziltha said in amazement. That's impossible. You can't land capital ships on a planet. You can't, Chen's voice replied. We can. Every human ship is designed for planetary landing if necessary. But why? Because we're not here to conquer a planet, Commander. We're here to liberate it. And you can't liberate people from orbit. What followed was the most one-sided ground battle in recorded history. The Krex had prepared for orbital bombardment. They had prepared for airstrikes. They had prepared for conventional ground assault. They had not prepared for humans. Human soldiers poured out of their landed ships like an avalanche. But these weren't the neat, organized formations that most species used in warfare. These were individuals acting with a coordination that seemed almost telepathic. How do they communicate so well without radio contact? Ziltha asked, watching the tactical displays. They don't need radios, Morrison explained. They've been fighting together for so long, they know what each other is thinking. But it wasn't just the coordination that made the difference. It was the equipment. Human soldiers carried weapons that seemed designed by people who had given up on the concept of overkill. Rifles that could punch through tank armor. Grenades that could level buildings, personal shields that could stop artillery shells, and they used all of it with a casual efficiency that was terrifying to watch. Target the slave camps first, Chen ordered over the tactical network. Everything else is secondary. Within 4 hours, the first camp was liberated. Ziltha watched the video feed as human soldiers broke down the gates and helped emaciated prisoners to safety. Many of the prisoners were her own species, Velthari, who had been enslaved 6 months ago. They looked up at their human rescuers with confusion and fear. One young Velthari child, barely old enough to walk, approached a massive human soldier. The soldier, who looked like he could wrestle a tank, knelt down and offered the child a piece of chocolate. Why chocolate? Ziltha asked. Human children love chocolate, Morrison explained. We figured other species' children might too. He was right. The child's face lit up with the first smile anyone had seen from the prisoners. That image, a battle-scarred human warrior sharing candy with an alien child, would become the most famous photograph in Galactic history. By the end of the first day, 12 camps had been liberated. The Krex forces, faced with enemies who seemed to treat their most devastating weapons as minor inconveniences, began to surrender in large numbers. By the end of the second day, the planet was free. But the humans weren't finished. Admiral, Ziltha said as she watched human ships distributing food and medical supplies to the liberated prisoners. The mission is complete. Why aren't you leaving? Chen looked tired but determined. Commander, rescuing people is only half the job. The other half is making sure they stay rescued. Over the next week, Ziltha witnessed something she had never seen before. An occupying army that actually helped. Human engineers worked around the clock to repair the planet's infrastructure. They fixed power plants, rebuilt hospitals, and restored communication networks. They did it without being asked, without expecting payment, and without any apparent desire to claim the planet for themselves. Why? She asked Captain Rodriguez as they watched human medics treating former slaves. What do you gain from this? Rodriguez looked confused by the question. What do you mean, what do we gain? Every species that provides military aid expects something in return. Territory, resources, trade agreements. What do humans want? We want those people to be safe, he said simply. That's it. That's not how galactic politics works. Then maybe galactic politics is broken. On the 7th day after liberation, representatives from the Galactic Council finally arrived. High Admiral Vextar himself came aboard the Vengeance for a meeting with Admiral Chen. Ziltha was invited to attend as an observer. She expected political maneuvering, territorial negotiations, and complex diplomatic discussions. Instead, she watched a human grandmother dress down one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. Hi, Admiral, Chen said without any preamble. Where were you? I beg your pardon? 300,000 people were enslaved on this planet. We sent you intelligence reports. We provided evidence. We asked for action. Where were you? Vextar's expression hardened. Admiral Chen, you must understand that the Galactic Council cannot act hastily. We have procedures, protocols. You have excuses, Chen interrupted. While you were forming committees, children were dying in slave camps. The Council appreciates what humanity has done here, but you cannot simply take unilateral military action whenever you please. There are laws, treaties. Chen stood up slowly. She was a full head shorter than the High Admiral, but somehow she seemed to tower over him. High Admiral, let me make something very clear. Humanity didn't ask for permission to rescue these people, and we're not asking for forgiveness. When innocent lives are at stake, we act. Period. That kind of thinking leads to chaos. That kind of thinking leads to empty slave camps and free people. Chen's voice grew cold. Here's what's going to happen. Humanity is establishing a permanent presence in this system. We're going to help these people rebuild their world. And if anyone tries to enslave them again, they'll have to go through us. You can't just claim a sovereign world. We're not claiming it. We're protecting it. Big difference. Vextar sputtered for a moment, then tried a different approach. Admiral, be reasonable. Humanity is still new to galactic politics. You don't understand the complexities. I understand that while you were talking, people were suffering. I understand that when we called for help, you sent forms to fill out. And I understand that if we waited for your procedures, those 300,000 people would be dead. Chen walked to the view screen and pointed at the planet below. Take a good look, High Admiral. That's what results look like. Those people are free because humans decided they should be free. They're alive because humans decided their lives mattered. And what happens next time? When another crisis emerges? Chen turned back to face him and her smile was absolutely terrifying. Next time, you can try to beat us there. After the Galactic Council delegation left, empty-handed and thoroughly frustrated, Chen called Ziltha to her ready room. Commander, I have an offer for you. What kind of offer? The Colonial Defense Network is expanding. We need liaisons with other species, people who understand both human methods and galactic politics. Chen poured 2 cups of something that smelled like burned leaves. Interested? Ziltha thought about everything she had witnessed. The impossible rescue, the casual disregard for impossible odds, the determination to help people for no other reason than that they needed help. Admiral, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did humanity really come to our aid? The research station, this planet. You're spending enormous resources to help people you've never met. Chen sat down and sipped her drink. Commander, do you know what the last words of Earth were when we finally left our solar system? No. They were spoken by an old man in a refugee camp. Someone asked him what he wanted humanity to accomplish among the stars. Chen's eyes grew distant. He said, I want my great-grandchildren to live in a galaxy where no one has to be afraid. She looked directly at Ziltha. That's why we're here, Commander. Not for territory or resources or political power. We're here because someone somewhere shouldn't have to be afraid. And you think you can create that kind of galaxy? Chen's smile was warm now, not terrifying. Commander, we're humans. We've survived ice ages, plagues, wars, and our own stupidity. We've turned a death world into a garden and learned to reach the stars." She gestured toward the view screen, where human ships continued their work of rebuilding and healing. "Creating a galaxy where good people can sleep safely at night. That's not impossible. That's just Tuesday." As Ziltha looked out at the peaceful planet, below, a world that had been a slave camp a week ago, and was now bustling with free people, rebuilding their lives, she realized something profound. The galaxy had been wrong about humans. They weren't primitive warmongers from a death world, they were gardeners from a death world, and they were determined to plant flowers in the darkest corners of space. "Admiral," she said finally, "when do I start?" Chen's grin lit up the room. "Welcome to the Colonial Defense Network, Commander. Try to keep up." Outside the view screen, human ships continued their work, protecting the innocent, healing the wounded, turning impossible situations into Tuesday afternoons. And across the galaxy, other species were beginning to learn a simple truth. When you sent out a distress call, you might not get the help you expected, but if humans answered, you would get the help you needed, even if you didn't know you needed it yet. The end in the years that followed. The Colonial Defense Network grew to include representatives from 47 species. The Galactic Council eventually adopted many human innovations in crisis response, though they never quite managed to match the speed of human intervention. The Kreks, as a species, survived. Those who chose to live peacefully were welcomed into galactic society. Those who continued raiding and slaving learned why the phrase "humans are coming" became the most feared words in the criminal underworld. And on a small research station called Harmony's Edge, children from a dozen different worlds continued to play in gardens that bloomed because someone from a death world decided that innocence was worth protecting, no matter the cost.